The red warning lights flashed across the bridge of the U.S.A. Liberty as Admiral Jake Collins stared at the massive alien ship that had just dropped out of hyperspace. The vessel was unlike anything in human records, sleek and organic-looking with purple energy crackling along its hull. Behind it came 11 more ships, each one representing a different alien species from across the galaxy. Jake had been expecting this day for months. The reports from the outer colonies had been growing more concerning with each passing week. Alien scout ships watching human settlements, mysterious energy readings near their trade routes, and now this. A full diplomatic flotilla had arrived. At Earth's doorstep with what everyone knew would be bad news. The communication request came through on all frequencies at once. Jake nodded to his communications officer, Lieutenant Karen Hayes, who opened the channel. The holographic display flickered to life, showing a tall, thin alien with blue-gray skin and eyes like liquid silver. Its voice carried the arrogance of someone who had never been told no. "I am Ambassador Kethvor of the Galactic Council," the alien said, its words translated by the ship's computer. "You primitive humans have violated sacred galactic law by expanding into protected space. Your reckless colonization ends now." Jake kept his expression neutral, even as anger flared in his chest. Behind him, Captain Lisa Rodriguez stepped forward, her hand resting on her sidearm. She had been on the frontier for 3 years, watching these aliens spy on human colonies. She knew better than anyone what this conversation really meant. "The Galactic Council has made its decision," Kethvar continued. "You will immediately cease all deep space operations. You will abandon your illegal settlements in the outer systems. You will surrender your colonial fleets to Council authority. You have exactly 72 standard hours to comply." The transmission cut off before Jake could respond. Around the bridge, his crew exchanged worried glances. Communications Officer Hayes was already receiving similar transmissions from across human space. The ultimatum had been broadcast to every human settlement, every colony ship, every frontier outpost. On the frontier world of New Montana, mining engineer Pete Johnson watched the sky with growing dread. The alien ships had been visible for hours now, dark shapes moving between the stars, like predators circling their prey. His wife, Amy Turner, stood beside him, her hands dirty from working in the hydroponic gardens that fed their small colony. "They're scanning us," Amy said quietly, pointing to the strange blue beams that swept across the settlement. "Just like the stories from the other colonies," Pete nodded grimly. The rumors had been spreading for months through the frontier communication networks. Alien ships appearing near human settlements, conducting detailed scans, taking readings, mapping defenses. Everyone knew something was coming, but the government had kept telling them everything was under control. The colony's communication center crackled to life with the emergency broadcast from Earth. Colony Administrator Greg Thompson gathered everyone in the main hall to hear the Council's ultimatum. 300 colonists, men and women, who had left Earth to build new lives among the stars, listened in growing anger as the alien demands were read aloud. 72 hours, Thompson said when the message ended. "That's what they're giving us to abandon everything we've built here." The crowd erupted in angry voices. These people had spent years carving a home out of the wilderness of New Montana. They had built farms, schools, workshops, and families. Now some alien council that had never heard of them wanted to take it all away, because humans had dared to claim systems that were supposedly off-limits back on Earth. President Daniel Hayes was in an emergency meeting with his top advisors. The Oval Office had been converted into a war room, with holographic displays showing the positions of every human ship and settlement across known space. The news was not good. The Council fleet numbered over 3,000 ships, more firepower than humanity had ever seen in one place. "They've been planning this for months," said General Robert Kane, his weathered face grim with worry. "Our intelligence reports show they've been positioning forces throughout the sector. This isn't a negotiation. It's a surrender demand." Secretary of State Helen Martinez looked exhausted. She had been trying to maintain diplomatic channels with various alien species for years, but the responses had grown increasingly hostile. "The preliminary contact attempts have failed completely," she reported. "They view us as children who need to be disciplined." President Hayes studied the tactical displays. Human colonies stretched across 47 star systems with over 12 million people living on frontier worlds. The colonization program had been humanity's greatest achievement, proof that they could thrive among the stars. Now it was all at risk. "What are our military options?" Hayes asked. General Kane pulled up another display showing human naval assets. "On paper, we have about 800 ships of various classes. Most are lightly armed colony support vessels. Against 3,000 alien warships." He shrugged. It would be a massacre. The room fell silent. Everyone knew the truth that no one wanted to say aloud. Humanity had expanded too fast, claimed too much territory, and now they were facing the consequences. The Galactic Council had the ships and weapons to enforce their demands, and there seemed to be nothing Earth could do to stop them. But President Hayes was thinking about something else. For the past 5 years, a significant portion of the military budget had been classified under Project Deep Shield. Ships and personnel had been reassigned to unknown locations. Construction projects had been approved without congressional oversight. When asked about these expenditures, Admiral Collins had simply said they were preparing for future contingencies. Hayes looked at the countdown timer on the wall. 68 hours and 37 minutes until the Council's deadline. He picked up the secure communication device that connected directly to Admiral Collins' flagship. "Jake," he said when the connection opened. "It's time." On the bridge of the U.S. Liberty, Admiral Collins smiled grimly as he received the coded transmission. Around him, his senior staff began implementing protocols they had been training for in secret for years. The masquerade was finally over. "Signal all Deep Fleet assets," Collins ordered. "Initiate Revelation Protocol. It's time to show the galaxy what humans are really capable of." Lieutenant Hayes began transmitting coded signals to locations throughout human space. To anyone monitoring human communications, it would look like routine traffic. But to the captains of certain ships and commanders of certain stations, the messages carried a very different meaning. The 72-hour countdown had begun, but the Galactic Council had made one critical error in their calculations. Had assumed that the humans they had been watching for months represented the full extent of Earth's capabilities. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The 72 hours passed like a ticking bomb in the minds of every human across the galaxy. On the bridge of his flagship, Zephyrian Admiral Vexthol watched the countdown reach zero with satisfaction. The primitive humans had remained silent throughout the deadline, offering no response to the Council's generous terms. Now they would face the consequences of their arrogance. "All fleet units, advance to assault positions," Vexthol commanded. Behind him, a massive Council armada began moving toward human space. 3,000 warships from 12 different species, the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. The humans would surrender within hours once they saw this overwhelming display of power. The Admiral had studied human expansion patterns for months. Their colonies were lightly defended, their ships were simple cargo haulers and mining vessels, and their military consisted of barely 800 outdated ships. The Council intelligence reports showed a species that had grown too fast for their own good, spreading themselves thin across dozens of systems without proper defenses. Vexthol did not know was that Dr. Rachel Barnes had been waiting for this moment for 5 years. Deep inside a classified facility beneath the Colorado mountains, She activated the most ambitious deception in human history. Project Deep Shield had cost trillions of credits and required the cooperation of every human settlement, but it was finally time to reveal the truth. Initiate revelation protocol across all sectors, Dr. Barnes commanded. Her fingers danced across holographic controls that connected to hidden transmitters throughout human space. A masquerade that had fooled the galaxy for years was about to end. In the Kepler system, Commander Nick Peterson received the coded signal aboard what appeared to be a simple cargo hauler named the Star Trader. For 3 years, he and his crew had maintained the illusion of being civilian merchants, trading supplies between colonies while Zephyrian scouts watched their every move. The aliens had cataloged his ship as a harmless transport vessel carrying food and manufacturing equipment. Peterson smiled as he activated the hidden systems built into his ship's hull. The holographic projectors that had disguised his vessel shut down, revealing the true form of the UE's vengeance. Where moments before had been a battered cargo ship, now floated a sleek assault cruiser bristling with weapons that made Zephyrian destroyers look like toys. "This is Commander Peterson. To all Deep Fleet assets," he broadcast on secured channels. "The mask comes off now. Show them what we really are." Across human space, the transformation began. Mining stations dropped their holographic camouflage to reveal massive weapon platforms. Civilian freighters shed their false hulls to become heavily armed warships. Agricultural colonies activated hidden defense grids that could destroy entire fleets. What the aliens had seen as a scattered collection of helpless settlements was actually a carefully planned military network. On New Montana, Pete Johnson watched the sky change as the planet's hidden defenses came online. The simple farming colony that his wife Amy had helped build was suddenly surrounded by weapon emplacements that rose from underground bunkers. The orbital stations that had appeared to be simple communication satellites revealed themselves as armed platforms capable of defending the entire system. "My God," Amy whispered as she watched ships materialize seemingly from empty space. "How long have we been living on a fortress world?" The answer was 5 years. Every human colony established during that time had been designed with hidden military capabilities. Every transport ship had concealed weapons. Every mining operation had been equipped with sensors and defensive systems. The rapid expansion that the aliens had viewed as reckless desperation was actually the most sophisticated military deception ever attempted. Admiral Vexthal stared at his tactical displays in growing confusion as his fleet approached the Sol system. His sensors were detecting ships where none had existed moments before. The 800 human vessels his intelligence had reported were multiplying before his eyes. First 1,000, then 2,000, then 3,000 ships appeared as if conjured from nothing. "Impossible," he muttered. "Where did they come from?" His tactical officer, a young Kalfani named Drextal, was frantically analyzing the sensor data. "Admiral, the humans have been using some kind of stealth technology. Our scans show massive energy signatures throughout their space. These aren't cargo ships. These are warships." The truth was even more sophisticated than stealth technology. Humanity had used holographic disguises, false energy signatures, and carefully orchestrated deception to hide their true military strength. While alien scouts had been watching human settlements, they had been seeing exactly what Earth wanted them to see. Captain Tony Martinez commanded the UE's Thunderstrike, a massive dreadnought that had spent 3 years disguised as an orbital construction platform above Mars. His ship alone carried more firepower than most alien battle groups, and he was just one of dozens of similar vessels that had been hiding in plain sight throughout the Sol system. "Admiral Collins sends his regards," Martinez transmitted to the approaching Council fleet. "He wanted me to thank you for giving us so much time to prepare." The alien fleet began to slow as Admiral Vexthul realized the magnitude of his error. The humans had not been caught unprepared. They had been waiting. Every scout mission, every surveillance operation, every intelligence-gathering effort had been feeding the aliens false information, while Earth prepared for war. Lieutenant Colonel Sandra Phillips led the first wave of human fighters that streaked toward the alien formation. Her squadron had been training in the asteroid belt for 2 years, perfecting tactics designed specifically to counter Council ship designs. The aliens had shared enough technical data during their diplomatic contacts to give human engineers detailed knowledge of their capabilities and weaknesses. "Remember your training," Phillips broadcast to her pilots. "They think they know what humans can do. Show them they were wrong." The first engagement lasted less than 10 minutes. Phillips and her fighters tore through the alien formation like a pack of wolves attacking sheep. The Council ships, designed for fighting other alien species with predictable tactics, had no defense against human innovation and aggression. Admiral Vexthul watched in horror as 20 of his ships were destroyed before they could even return. Fire. The human fighters moved with impossible coordination, striking at weak points his engineers had thought were undetectable. These were not the primitive warriors his intelligence reports had described. All units, defensive formation. He commanded desperately. "Signal the reserve fleets. We need reinforcements immediately." But Admiral Jake Collins was already 3 steps ahead. The hidden human fleet began emerging from every direction, surrounding the Council armada in a carefully planned trap. The aliens had come expecting to find a handful of desperate defenders. Instead, they found themselves facing the full military might of a species that had been planning for this war since their first contact with galactic civilization. The galaxy was about to learn that underestimating humanity was a fatal mistake. The destruction of Admiral Vexthul's advance fleet sent shockwaves throughout the Galactic Council. Emergency sessions were called on every member world as reports flooded in of the human deception. What had seemed like an easy conquest had turned into their worst military disaster in centuries. But Admiral Jake Collins was not content to simply defend human space. He had spent 5 years planning for this moment, and defense was only the first phase. "Signal all strike groups," Collins commanded from the bridge of the UES Liberty. "Operation Hammer Falls begins immediately. Show the galaxy what happens when you threaten Earth." Captain Greg Thompson received the attack orders aboard the UES Retribution as his task force moved through hyperspace toward the Kepler system. His target was the primary Zephyrian naval construction facility, the massive orbital shipyard that produced half of their fleet. The aliens had built it in what they thought was secure space, protected by defense platforms and patrol squadrons. They never imagined humans would dare to attack so deep in Council territory. "Emergence in 30 seconds," reported his navigation officer Lieutenant Karen Hayes. Around them, 25 human warships prepared to drop out of hyperspace directly into the heart of enemy space. The Zephyrians would have perhaps minutes to react before their most important military installation was reduced to glowing debris. Thompson studied the tactical data one final time. The shipyard was massive, easily 10 times larger than anything humans had built. It could construct a dozen capital ships simultaneously and housed over 50,000 alien workers. But size meant nothing if you could not defend what you built. "All ships drop stealth and engage," Thompson ordered. The human fleet materialized around the Zephyrian facility like vengeful ghosts. The aliens had mere seconds to realize what was happening before the UES. Retribution opened fire with weapons that made their defensive systems look like ancient toys. The shipyard shields lasted exactly 47 seconds before collapsing under the concentrated firepower of human innovation. 300 light years away, Colonel Mike Johnson was leading a very different kind of assault. His transport, Ships had dropped out of hyperspace near the Kelthani military command world of Nexus Prime. But instead of engaging the orbital defenses, they had slipped past using stealth technology that made them invisible to alien sensors. Now his ground forces were preparing to do something the galaxy thought impossible: capture a fortified council world with nothing but human soldiers and determination. "Remember the briefing," Johnson told his troops as their drop pods prepared to launch. "The Kelthani think their command bunkers are impregnable. They have never faced human tactics. Show them how wrong they are." Staff Sergeant Maria Gonzalez checked her squad's equipment one final time. Each soldier carried weapons designed specifically to counter Kelthani armor and shields. They had trained for 2 years in facilities that perfectly replicated alien defensive structures. The Kelthani were about to discover that their military doctrine was no match for human adaptability. The drop pods launched silently from the stealth transports, invisible to Kelthani detection systems, until they slammed into the planet's surface. Within minutes, human soldiers were fighting their way through defensive positions that had never been breached in 3 centuries of warfare. The aliens found themselves facing tactics they could not understand or counter. Gonzalez led her squad through the main command complex, using routes that should have been impossible to navigate. Human intelligence had spent months infiltrating Kelthani computer systems, mapping every corridor and defensive position. The aliens were fighting on their own ground, but somehow the humans knew it better than they did. "Sector 7 secured," she reported as her squad eliminated the last Kelthani. "Defenders. Command bunker is ours." The same scene was playing out across dozens of worlds as human strike forces attacked Council military installations with surgical precision. These were not random raids, but carefully coordinated strikes designed to cripple the alien military. Machine at its source. Supply depots burned, command centers fell, and manufacturing facilities crumbled under human assault. Agent Kevin Brooks watched the chaos unfold from his hidden observation post on the Council capital world. For 3 years, he had lived among the aliens as a diplomatic attaché, all while installing backdoors in their communication systems and mapping their defensive networks. The aliens had welcomed him as a representative of primitive humanity, never suspecting that he was one of Earth's most dangerous intelligence operatives. "Network infiltration complete," he reported through encrypted channels. "Council communications are under our control." Across the galaxy, alien commanders found themselves unable to coordinate their scattered forces. Their secure channels carried false orders, their tactical data was corrupted, and their intelligence networks fed them lies. Dr. Susan Park and her team of cyber warfare specialists had turned the aliens' own technology against them, leaving the Council blind and confused while human forces struck at will. On SciFiPrime, panic was spreading through the alien leadership as reports arrived of human attacks throughout their territory. High Counselor Zeethmar watched his tactical displays with growing horror as red markers indicated the destruction of military installations across 6 star systems. The humans were not simply defending themselves. They were systematically dismantling the Council's ability to wage war. "How many facilities have we lost?" he demanded. His aide, a junior officer named Kexival, consulted the chaotic reports. 17. Major installations destroyed or captured, Admiral. The humans seemed to know exactly where to hit us for maximum damage. The truth was that Earth had been planning these strikes for years. Every diplomatic contact, every trade negotiation, every cultural exchange had been an opportunity to gather intelligence on Council military capabilities. The aliens had thought they were dealing with naive newcomers to galactic politics, but they had actually been revealing their secrets to master strategists. The Arcturian Collective attempted to rally the remaining Council forces for a coordinated counterattack, but their communications were compromised and their commanders were scattered. The Kelthani High Command ordered a general retreat, hoping to regroup their forces around their core worlds. But human strike teams were already moving against those targets as well. Admiral Collins watched the tactical displays from his flagship with grim satisfaction. The first phase of humanity's response was proceeding exactly as planned. The Council had expected to find a weak species ripe for conquest. Instead, they had awakened something far more dangerous than they could have imagined. "Signal all fleet." "Commanders," Collins ordered, "Phase 2 begins immediately. It is time to show the galaxy that threatening Earth comes with a price too terrible to pay." The desperate Council leaders made their gravest mistake when they decided to target human civilians. High Counselor Zethmar, watching his military forces crumble under human assault, convinced the remaining alien commanders that attacking civilian colonies would force Earth to negotiate. The strike force that moved toward the agricultural world of Haven carried enough firepower to level entire cities. They believed that threatening innocent humans would make their military back down. They could not have been more wrong, Captain. Lisa Rodriguez was visiting Haven when the alien ships dropped out of hyperspace above the peaceful farming world. She had come to inspect the colony's hidden defenses, part of the network that had fooled Council scouts for years. But the attacking fleet was too large and moved too fast for the defensive systems to stop them all. The orbital bombardment lasted only minutes, but it was enough to destroy 3 farming settlements and kill over 4,000 human colonists. Men, women, and children who had never fired a shot in anger died because alien leaders thought they could intimidate Earth by murdering innocents. Among the dead was Amy Turner, the agricultural specialist who had helped build New Montana into a thriving world. Her husband, Pete Johnson, received the news while working in the colony's deep mines. The man who had spent years quietly building a new life among the stars fell to his knees as the communication from Haven reached him. His wife was gone, killed by aliens who saw human lives as bargaining chips in their desperate war. The news reached Earth within hours, transmitted across every communication channel in human space. President Daniel Hayes stood before the emergency session of Congress with tears in his eyes as he read the names of the dead. Behind him, holographic displays showed the smoking ruins of what had been thriving human communities just hours before. "They have crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed," Hayes said, his voice carrying a cold fury that made even his closest advisors step back. "The Galactic Council has chosen to murder our children in their beds. They will learn what it means to awaken the wrath of humanity." Within the hour, every restriction on human military forces was lifted. Operation Righteous Fury began immediately, and Admiral Jake Collins found himself commanding not just a defensive war, but a campaign of total destruction. The rules of engagement changed from military conquest to something far more terrible. Captain Eric Foster received his new orders aboard the heavy cruiser UES Wrath as his battle group approached the Zephyrian home system. For weeks, his forces had been conducting precision strikes against military targets, carefully avoiding civilian casualties. Those days were over. The aliens had chosen to make this a war against humanity itself, and humanity would respond. "Kind, all ships, new target priority," Foster broadcast to his fleet. Every military installation, every government facility, every industrial complex. The Zephyrians wanted to see what happens when you kill human families. They are about to find out. The bombardment of SciFiPrime began at dawn, local time. Human warships emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, their weapons already locked onto targets across the alien homeworld. The planet's orbital defenses lasted exactly 12 minutes before being reduced to glowing debris. After that, nothing stood between human fury and the world that had started this war. Foster watched through his ship's sensors as precision strikes eliminated every trace of Zephyrian military power. Shipyards that had built warships for centuries vanished in nuclear fire. Command centers that had coordinated attacks across the galaxy became smoking craters. Industrial complexes that had supplied the Council war machine ceased to exist. Zephyrian government tried to surrender after the first hour of bombardment, but Foster's response was swift and final. "You had your chance to surrender when you received our ultimatum," he transmitted to the alien leaders. "You chose to murder our children instead. There will be no negotiation now." Major Jennifer Smith coordinated the occupation of captured Council worlds with efficiency that bordered on ruthless. Human forces established military governments that made it clear any resistance would be met with overwhelming force. The alien populations, who had lived under the protection of Council fleets for centuries, suddenly found themselves under the rule of a species they had dismissed as primitive. On the former Kelfani world of Nexus Prime, Smith's administrators implemented new laws with mechanical precision. Any alien caught planning resistance disappeared. Any attempt to contact remaining Council forces resulted in the entire settlement being relocated to labor camps. The message was clear: humanity would tolerate no challenge to their authority. "The transition period is proceeding smoothly," Smith reported to her superiors. "Local populations are adapting to human rule faster than projected. It seems they prefer efficient governance to their previous system." Dr. Tim Anderson and his scientific teams began analyzing captured Council technology with systematic thoroughness. What they discovered confirmed what human strategists had suspected for years. The aliens had advanced ships and weapons, but they lacked the innovative thinking that drove human engineering. Their technology was sophisticated but predictable, following patterns that made it vulnerable to human countermeasures. Their entire military doctrine is based on outdated concepts. Anderson reported from his mobile laboratory aboard the UES Discovery. "They fight the same way they have for centuries. No adaptation, no innovation, no surprises. It is like fighting an army that refuses to learn." The final battle of the war took place at Celestin, the fortress world where the Arcturian collective had gathered the last remnants of Council forces. The aliens had turned the entire planet into a massive military base with defensive systems that could theoretically hold off any attack. They believed their superior numbers and fortified positions would force humanity to negotiate. Admiral Collins arrived at Celestin with the largest human fleet ever assembled. Over 8,000 ships surrounded the fortress world, carrying enough firepower to crack the planet's crust. The aliens had built their defenses to withstand conventional siege warfare, but humanity did not fight conventional wars. "Signal the planet," Collins ordered. "Tell them they have 1 hour to surrender unconditionally. After that, Celestin becomes an example to the rest of the galaxy." The alien response was defiant, full of threats about Council reinforcements and inevitable victory. Collins listened to their transmission with the cold patience of a man who had already won the war. When the hour expired, he gave the order. That ended the Galactic Council forever. All ships fire at will. The bombardment of Celestin lasted 6 hours and left nothing alive on the planet's surface. The fortress world that had symbolized Council power became a monument to the price of challenging humanity. Across the galaxy, the remaining alien worlds received the same message: submit to human rule or share Celestin's fate. The war was over, but humanity's dominance was just beginning. The war ended not with treaties or negotiations, but with complete surrender. The surviving alien leaders found themselves aboard Admiral Jake Collins' flagship, the U.E.'s Liberty, as prisoners rather than diplomats. Ambassador Keffer, who had delivered the original ultimatum with such arrogance, now stood in shackles before a human tribunal. His liquid silver eyes that had once gleamed with superiority now reflected only defeat and fear. The proceedings were broadcast throughout the galaxy on every communication frequency. Billions of alien beings watched as their former leaders faced human justice. Collins sat at the head of the tribunal, his expression as cold as the space between stars. Behind him stood the flags of every human colony that had been threatened by Council aggression, including a memorial banner for Haven and its murdered civilians. "You came to our system demanding surrender," Collins said, his voice carrying to every corner of the galaxy. "You threatened our families, destroyed our homes, and murdered our children. Now you will learn what justice means to humanity." The sentences were swift and final. The Council leadership was disbanded forever. Their military forces were to be completely dismantled. Their worlds would be governed by human administrators until Earth decided they could be trusted with limited self-rule. The galaxy that had dismissed humans as primitive newcomers now found itself under the authority of the species they had tried to destroy. President Daniel Hayes addressed the galaxy from the Oval Office, his words translated into dozens of alien languages. The holographic transmission reached every inhabited world, every space station, every ship that still carried alien crews. His message was simple and absolute. Humanity now ruled the galaxy, and any challenge to that rule would be met with the same fury that had destroyed the Council. "We sought only peace and the right to expand among the stars," Hayes said. "You forced us to become something else. The galaxy is now under human protection. Those who accept our authority will find us fair and just rulers. Those who resist will share the fate of Celestin." Captain Lara Wilson found herself appointed as military governor of the former Zephyrian core worlds. Her first task was implementing reconstruction programs that would integrate the defeated aliens into human civilization. The work was massive in scope, involving the complete reorganization of governments, economies, and social structures across dozens of worlds. Wilson established her headquarters on SciFiPrime, in the same building where the High Council had once planned humanity's destruction. The irony was not lost on the alien population, who watched human engineers rebuilding their world according to Earth's specifications. The new schools taught human history and values. The new factories produced goods designed by human engineers. The new government operated under laws written by human lawmakers. "Progress report, General Kane," Wilson said during her weekly briefing with Earth Command. "The integration programs are ahead of schedule. Local populations are adapting to human administration faster than our projections indicated." General Robert Kane reviewed the data from his office in the Pentagon. Across the former Council territories, human administrators were establishing order with remarkable efficiency. The aliens who had once viewed themselves as superior to humanity were discovering that human governance was more effective and fair than anything they had experienced under Council rule. "Resistance movements?" Kane asked. "Minimal and decreasing," Wilson reported. "Most alien populations have realized that cooperation with human authority brings better living conditions than they had under their previous governments. The few resistance cells that remain are being eliminated by local security forces staffed by aliens who prefer human rule." The transformation was indeed remarkable. On world after world, alien populations were embracing human leadership. The rigid caste systems that had dominated Council society were replaced by merit-based advancement. The corruption that had plagued alien governments was eliminated by human oversight. The technological stagnation that had kept alien civilizations static for centuries was broken by human innovation. Admiral Patricia Davis commanded the newly established Terran Colonial Authority, overseeing the integration of former Council territories into human space. Her headquarters aboard the massive space station Olympus served as the administrative center for an empire that now spanned 3/4 of the known galaxy. The station itself was a symbol of human achievement, larger and more advanced than anything the Council had ever built. "Status report on Sector 7. Davis requested from her command center. "Full integration achieved," replied Commander Steve Roberts, her chief of operations. "Local governments are functioning under human supervision. Trade routes are operational. Defense grids are online. The transition is complete." Davis nodded with satisfaction. The sector in question had been one of the most hostile to human rule, populated by species that had considered themselves the intellectual superiors of humanity. Now they were productive members of human civilization, contributing their knowledge and skills to projects that benefited the entire galaxy. Dr. Sarah Johnson headed the Galactic Integration Project from her research facility on Luna. Her task was analyzing the long-term implications of human dominance and developing strategies to maintain stability across such a vast empire. Her reports were required reading for every human administrator throughout the galaxy. "The psychological adaptation patterns are fascinating," Johnson explained during her presentation to the Integration Council. "Former Council species are not simply accepting human rule out of fear. They genuinely prefer our system of governance to what they had before. We have eliminated the inefficiencies and inequalities that plagued their societies for millennia." The evidence supported her conclusions. Alien worlds under human administration showed dramatic improvements in living standards, technological advancement, and social stability. The species that had once threatened humanity with extinction were now thriving under human leadership in ways they had never experienced under Council rule. Children throughout the galaxy attended schools where they learned about human history, human values, and human achievements. Young Zephyrians studied the colonization of Mars with the same enthusiasm their ancestors had once reserved for Council propaganda. Kelthani students wrote essays about human exploration of the outer systems. Arcturian children played games based on human military victories. Admiral Collins stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed U.E.'s Dominion, the largest battleship ever built. Through the transparent aluminum windows, he could see the shipyards where humans and aliens worked together to build the next generation of exploration vessels. The galaxy that had once tried to limit human expansion now provided the resources and workforce for humanity's continued growth into unexplored regions. The final message was clear to every being in the galaxy. Humanity had not sought this war, but they had finished it completely. The age of human dominance had begun, and it would last as long as the stars themselves burned in the endless night of space.